Hi, and welcome to Fix It to Grow It, the business podcast about optimizing your processes and the value of your people. My name is Dave Kislick, and I am thrilled to be able to say we are here. After a long road of putting this whole thing together, we are launching with this episode 1, hopefully of many. So thank you for being here, and please, as we progress through the episodes in this season, we'd love to hear your feedback. Are we covering topics that matter to you? Are we bringing you guests that are interesting to hear their story and perspective? And is my executive producer, Lily, doing a good job of keeping us in line? Some of these videos that you're going to see over the course of our seasons are going to be my own thoughts and ideas from my experience in consulting, in the retail world, in management, in all kinds of sales and operational roles, and really based on what kinds of issues are prevalent in today's business world. What kind of problems are we facing, or where do we have opportunities for growth? Some of the other episodes you'll see are going to be guest interviews. And in fact, we're going to have our first one today. These guests are going to be talking about their own ideas in terms of running businesses, growth of those businesses, getting to those next levels of size, revenue, and success, and where they needed help along the way. Maybe it'll help you out along your own way of running your own business. But today we're going to kick things off with Marie Incontrera. She is the CEO and founder of Incontrera Consulting, a digital marketing and thought leadership consulting agency. Marie is also an author of the Amazon bestseller, Social Your Book Launch. She's also a speechwriter, a TEDx speaker, creative professional who works with thought leaders on leveraging their online presence through social media, podcasts, and speaking engagements. Some of her clients include best-selling business authors, coaches, medical professionals, big tech companies, political candidates, orchestras, Broadway shows, the list goes on. Marie has been managing the social media accounts of our own company, Liz Kislick Associates, for several years now as well. My conversation with Marie covers a bunch of different topics about running a new and growing business, from challenges facing new business owners, to industry expectations, to generational stereotypes, and even managing creative people in a business setting. I really hope you enjoy this episode and get some value out of the conversation, so let's get to it. Hi, Marie. So happy to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to talk to you today.
Excellent. Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, this is our first session. This is the first podcast we're recording, so excited to get going. And thank you so much for willing to be here. I have a lot of questions for you about growth and your business. And I know I've sent you a couple in advance already, so let's just dive right into that. Give me a brief background. How did you get into this line of work, and where did you really start?
Yeah, thank you. So I was a working jazz musician throughout my 20s in New York. And the thing they don't tell you about being a jazz musician is that you could be at the top of your career, which I was. I was playing Carnegie Hall in the Blue Note and doing all these really amazing things. And I was broke. And so I was doing every odd job that I could. I was teaching part-time. I was, copying music for anybody who needed it. I was, doing various things just to kind of make ends meet and pay the rent. And of course, I was friends with someone we both know, Dory Clark. And she one day sent me a text message. It was kind of a well-timed text message. I was at my teaching job, which was exceedingly not a good fit for a lot of reasons. And she texted me and she goes, I have an idea for you. You should quit your job and become a virtual assistant. And I went, I'm sorry, what? And she said, well, I'll help you get started. I can, introduce you to a few people and you could see if you like it. And the rest is history, right? So I said, what do I have to lose? I got started within about a month from that day that she texted me with a couple clients, and I've just grown ever since. And so it started with me just working a few hours a week for a few people, and I've grown to the agency model. People sort of organically started coming to me for things that, the same things over time. So the market told me what it wanted from me, and I became a digital marketing and thought leadership consultant with an agency behind me.
So, had you had experience doing this kind of marketing and agency work at all, either as like a hobby or from school or anything else? Or was this really like, I'm just going to figure this out?
Yeah. So yes, mostly it was me figuring it out. As a musician, you sort of have to be the marketer. You have to be the person who does the admin and the logistics and everything for your whole career. And so I had a lot of applicable skills that I had sort of learned over time. But no, I don't have a business degree. I don't have any certifications behind me that someone might look for a CEO of a company, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of people end up in that position. I think our company as well is built on the same exact foundation. So, all of that said, what brought about Incontrera Consulting in the version that it is now from that transition?
So one of my first clients was a woman who had a social media firm, and her company looked a lot like what mine does now, right? I have freelancers and employees and what have you, and we structure it as sort of the account model, right? So a client will come to us and will three or four of us will put our heads together. We'll come up with strategy. We will, have sort of end-to-end service and that sort of thing. And it's not just one person, because it's nice to have redundancy, and I can take a day off sometimes. So that's sort of how it grew, but it really literally was just me for a long time. And the threshold for me hiring people was, oh wow, it's 5 o'clock and I can't get up from my chair yet. Okay, it's 7 o'clock and I can't get up from my chair yet. Oh, it's 9 o'clock and I'm still working. Right. So that was always the threshold of, okay, I need to hire somebody and I need to get somebody in to help me. And I don't even know what it is that they can help me with yet. But so it was a lot of trial and error in figuring out how to grow the business and who the right people were as we got bigger.
So I want to come back to that growth idea in a few minutes because it's so key to what we want to talk about. But before that, you're coming at this from a real grassroots perspective, it seems. You just kind of threw things at the wall and saw what stuck at the same time as you have some experience in this stuff. You know what, looks good, what feels good, so
Yeah.
you can help market that. And then now you're talking about bringing people on. Now, this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges of any business are the people
Mhm.
who work in it. And there are tons of different theories about whether you should be hiring people who believe in the vision you already have, or you hire the best people and see what the vision becomes, or whatever that might be. How did you approach bringing on these people, knowing that you didn't know what you really needed yet? And specifically, did you look for experience in the field that you're trying to operate in, or did you look for up and comers like yourself?
Mhm. That's a great question. So I have no management experience. I have a degree in a creative field. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, and so the people that I hired initially were friends. They were people who needed work. They needed a couple extra bucks and were willing to figure it out with me. And that was really the criteria that I was looking for was, a full disclosure, I don't know what I'm doing. Just be willing to show up and if you find a better way, suggest it to me. Right. And so at the time it was one person, and then it was two, and then it was three. And so it was very easy to have that model of, well, we all work from home, we all work when we can. And, maybe we'll meet up in a cafe one day and just like talk about what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very informal. in which when you have a freelance model, you can do. And so that was how we grew it. For better or for worse, it allowed me to play. It allowed me to figure things out. It allowed me to make mistakes and say, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
So, based on that model,
Mm-hmm.
what were obviously you mentioned a big takeaway was you had flexibility. You had freedom of movement, of experimentation. You had freedom of failure. What were some of the things that were really tough about that model at this initial stage when you just started hiring people? You still were figuring out the industry and what worked and what didn't. What were the tough things that you came up against, not just for growth, but in general?
So I think that in the beginning, um, there were relatively few challenges because it was very much from the learning mindset. I think the biggest challenge that I had, and I'm thinking of the first year of working with people, right, was delegating well, right? And really being able to explain, okay, this is how I would do it, right? This is exactly what needs to get done. And here's the deadline, right? Like it sounds incredibly simple now, but at the time, like I had a lot of trouble saying, okay, here's what I need from you. Right. And so yeah, the early challenges were very much just getting the work out the door from my brain.
Okay. And what about on the getting work in to the company? How was that experience? Again, you had some experience doing marketing and things of that nature already, as you've mentioned, but what was that like to build business for yourself at that stage?
So I was actually very lucky. I had a friend who was very experienced, who had a vast network, who, was able to make one or two introductions to me. And once that started, I would say it was probably 6 months. And so it was before I had hired people where the referral machine really started to work, right? The building relationships, the you know I was way more flexible in the beginning because I had less work, and so I could say, okay, well, I could take this extra project on, that kind of thing. I could kind of spend extra time on things, and I built relationships really really early, and that started to pay dividends, and it's still paying dividends. I mean, I work with people for I've been in business 7.5 years. I think my longest client has been 7 years now.
Wow.
And he came to me like 6 months after I started, and he's still with me, right? It looks very different. He's sort of been willing to grow with the company, and say, hey, I need this now, can you do this, or here's how this should change. But loyalty and relationships have been the most important thing. And my marketing budget is still pretty much virtually $0, right? I don't do ads. I don't take out I don't take out ads in a magazine, or do Facebook ads or anything like that. I do my LinkedIn newsletter. I do my email newsletter. I pay somebody to help me with that. But outside of that, it really is mostly referrals.
Interesting. And how, with a referral based business,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many pitfalls in terms of are people actually saying your name out loud when you have no control over that. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of smaller companies and a lot of family run businesses and a lot of private enterprises like this are built on that structure. So how do you maintain that flow of referring from person to person so that you're getting new business?
So a lot of it is just being out there, and being ready to hear from people. I can't stress that has been the lifeblood. I mean, I've just been scrolling Facebook and see in a private group that somebody's looking for somebody, and all of a sudden I have a new, a new line of business, or I have a new referral partner or a business partner or something like that, right? some of it's just kind of watching my inbox and hearing people say like, hey, I need this, that sort of thing. And some of it is, good old fashioned, like just go out with your business friends, right? Go out with your entrepreneur friends. Don't be afraid to meet people, because you really and truly never know. You just never know who's going to be, your next partnership, your next business opportunity, that kind of thing. So for me, it's really been about staying ready and also knowing how to talk about what I do really, really well. The elevator pitch thing, the 30 seconds of
Yeah.
this is who I am, this is what I do, without a sale behind it, right? Just being able to say, hey, this is my company, this is how I spend my time every day. you know 9 times out of 10, the person I'm talking to either knows somebody who needs me or they need me, right? Or they'll just keep their ear open for me. So that's really been how it's grown, and it's been quite organic.
Okay. First of all, congratulations, because being able to say it works is such a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So I want to go back now to that growth that we were
Mhm.
talking about before. Now that we know a lot of your focuses of the word of mouth, organic growth, and the bringing in business, and how you've had people stick with you for so long, and all of this other stuff. So when you started bringing people on, it was very freelance. It was very, come as you will. Let's figure it out together. Now you're getting a little bit bigger. Now you're starting to see more business come in. Obviously, at a certain point, there needs to be some structure applied.
Yep.
What was that moment? Where did you decide, okay, I actually have to put not only time, but money and real resource into this
hmm
thing?
hmm So that actually, the start of that was COVID for me, believe it or not. People went home, there was a shutdown, and you know, all of my clients, like I work with a lot of people who do in-person training and speaking and keynoting and management consulting, uh, like your company, right? And um, all of a sudden everybody was home, and the only way for them to do any messaging was virtually. So I grew, I think we were at around 20,000 a month pre, like in February of 2020. And all of a sudden we were at 40, 50, like right away a month. And that to me was like, I had never imagined or seen that kind of money before. Right. And I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and working until 11, 12
Oh,
at night.
hell
And
yeah.
it was intoxicating in some ways. Like that growth was incredible. And I was very grateful to not be in the position that so many people were in of saying, where's work going to come from? Right. And I was able to give opportunities to people who suddenly were out of work, which in my field was a lot of artists, right? A lot of artists with different skills, right? So one of the people that I was very fortunate to hire, and she was writing tweets for me for like 20-25 bucks an hour, was my now chief operations officer, Ariana, who is an opera singer. And, she kind of came to me through a friend of a friend, and she was getting her MBA. She was literally like a few months from graduating. And so when she told me that, I was like, okay, good to know. We're probably going to need her at a certain, like she's got the Lean Six Sigma and she's got all those project management certifications. And it just stuck in my mind. And eventually she did become my chief operations officer.
Love it. Well, all right. So that's organic growth in such a different form than the
Right.
business itself, but so nice and so
Yeah.
parallel. That's great. So obviously, you brought up the fact that there were so many creatives out of work at the time because of COVID. So you had
Mhm.
a pool of potential experience and know how and just gung ho attitude of people who want to work. Really
Mhm.
lucky, all things considered.
Yep.
But how is it working with creatives being I will admit I'm like half creative, half operations.
Yep.
So I get it, but I also rebel against it, whichever it you want to pick in that sentence. So how is it working with creatives? Like, because there are very, very fun and very exciting things that can come from those kinds of relationships, and also some very frustrating things. So how do you balance
Oh,
that?
1000%. I will say, as a fellow creative slash business person, right? And I see this in my creative life and in my business life, right? You need people who can do both, and that's a very, very rare thing. Right. It's very rare to have somebody who really is 100% in on the creativity and 100% in on the getting it done, commitment to the business, commitment to, money and revenue and growth and all of that. Right. That's very, very important. And sometimes the other side of that doesn't exist. Right. And or it might exist when the shiny new object is the job, and then 6 months in, the creative is like, wait a minute, capitalism is the worst, and what are we doing here, right? Or whatever it is, right? Like, why is this important? What does this graphic matter, or what does this video matter? It's so stupid. I want to be working on my whatever it is, right?
Something else. Yeah.
So that, full disclosure, that does happen, and it's a frustrating thing because creatives also put, I'm a creative, so to me this is my creation, it's my baby, it might as well be a play that I'm writing, right? So I love it, it's the thing I think about. I dream about it at night. When I'm off, I go take a walk and I think about it. And so it's a very frustrating thing. But when it works and you find a creative person who has the other side and has I'm ready to iterate with you, and I'm ready to give this my all and really put my creative brain behind it, it's really special and it's really magical. And I find that my clients come to me and they stay with me because we have something that not every other company has, which is that we really are creatives first.
I like it. I like it. So there's another aspect to this, because obviously creatives as a culture, as a category, applies to a certain type of industry and obviously not others. But generationally speaking, I think we have a lot of, broad spectrum coverage here. Where do you find you're picking up people who are of the older generation and more used to the way things were pre-COVID, and in
Mm-hmm.
terms of marketing and creative design? Are you picking up young kids who are coming out of school looking for work and who are well versed in the new technologies? Is there a gap? Is there no gap? What's that like?
It's been kind of interesting. I mean, it sort of naturally started with people around my age, just because that was who I knew. And we do have people who are, 10, 15 years older than I am that work for me. And we have a couple of people who are, 5, 10 years younger than me. But for the most part, it tends to be the like elder millennial to early millennial to older Gen Z. That tends to be the average, the mean, I guess, right, of everybody that I've worked with. So there is a lot of being well versed in the new technology. And when we're not, like I'm in the last generation of people who didn't grow up with a smartphone, right? And I didn't have a computer until I was in second, third grade. So even though I'm not a digital native, um, I'm very well versed, and my colleagues are very well versed, and we stay on the trends, we research, we do all of that, but we also have the experience of being working people for quite a bit, and there's really nothing that replaces that experience.
So, with the experience aside, what about the industry? Because
Hmm.
that makes a lot of sense how you're looking at the gap of people and their experience and their know-how and what they
Yeah.
think is good versus not good, again from a creative perspective. But what about the industry as a whole? Are you the up and coming new kids on the block? Are you
Hmm.
the, oh yeah, they do it the way that everybody does it? Or are you more bringing back a retro version of what might exist for marketing and all of the services that you provide, and looking at that again, generationally speaking, knowing that things change constantly in this scene?
Right. So I think that that depends on who you ask. I started my first day freelancing was May 16th, 2016, which was my 30th and a half birthday. So I'm young. I'm about as young as they come when it's entrepreneurship, it's entrepreneurship, right? Like, I was probably just old enough to be taken seriously, striking out on my own, right? But I was young, and I'm still considered pretty young in terms of being a CEO or a business owner, right? I think the average age is something like 51. And that's just by virtue of it takes time and resources to be able to start a business, which, full disclosure, I didn't have. I just kind of took a risk at it, and it paid off. Um, so in terms of like, are we the up and comers? I think we are, because even though we do some of the traditional marketing and thought leadership stuff, we do it in a different way. And I know that most of our clients, because they are the more traditional leaders and the more traditional B2B thinkers and all of that, they're looking at us like, we are willing to take risks. And we definitely have a new way of doing things than 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I wouldn't say that we're like the newest kids on the block, because I've seen some TikTok companies out there that really focus on like the AI trends and things like that. So I wouldn't say that we're absolutely on the cutting edge, but we're 60-75% of the way there.
Okay. So, with what time we have left, I want to bring us to a little segment I like to call the Fix It 15. And this is where I want to talk to you about either a current or past problem that you've had or been having, and A, how you overcame it if you did. But more importantly, if you haven't, can we help? Can we look at something in 15, 20 minutes and say, here are some ideas, here are some ways that you can actually benefit? And for everyone at home, this is kind of a jump start for you as well. This is going to be anything that might help you get your brain moving with some ideas, or maybe consider an option that wasn't previously visible to you. So, Marie, what was something that you dealt with? And I'm going to preface this by saying you did mention you had a very, very big period of growth between, I think it was 21, 22, around that area. So what were the problems you were experiencing?
So yeah, so I again, so we had that growth in very early COVID, and then we sort of had another jump. And I was lucky enough, because at the end of 21 I could see it coming into 22.
Mhm.
And so I decided to bite the bullet. We went from being solely freelance into being a hybrid of employees and freelancers, as of early 22. And my revenue almost tripled between 21 and 22. So that kind of growth, it was incredibly overwhelming. Like it was great, and we had a lot of fun, and I loved the work and everything. And also there were times when, Ariana and I would discover that, well, oh my gosh, a client hasn't been happy for 3 months. And also, by the way, the work hasn't been getting done.
Mhm.
And, the only reason they took so long to tell us is because they know our track record, right? Or they have a good relationship with me. And so they gave it a chance. And, so we would discover like a 2 month deficit. And it happened enough times that I I said, okay, this is something, we're part of the problem here.
Okay.
Right. It's not just, okay, it's somebody, it's some rogue, you know, staff member who didn't do their work. We're part of it. And we're also not seeing this coming. Right. It's a big shock when it happens. So that means we don't have enough visibility.
So I'm sorry, I want to cut in and
Mhm.
break that
Yeah.
down a little bit
Yeah.
because it sounds like some of the core issues you were having there included the visibility that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
knowing what's happening, what's not happening. B, managing the different aspects of what's going on, whether it be project completion steps or just communication between people,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
something. And then C, are the expectations from your customers. So them saying, okay, we'll give it a chance, but not communicating that something's wrong in the first place. So you don't actually have anything to fix that you know of.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay. Any other main points from that segment?
I think, yeah, and I don't know, this is probably more of the same, right? But it was always like an email that would come out of the blue. It's always like this like late at night thing, or when everybody's off and has a moment to think, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
always that kind of thing. And so for me, it was this very rattling thing that would happen because, I'm trying to have a work-life balance too, right?
Right.
And I'm also trying to not work. Why do I have a staff? It's so that I don't work 24 hours a day. And and it happened enough times that we felt like, okay, this is something that we have to fix. And we are like, it's better. And I still see like, okay, there are some gaps, right? Like we have project management softwares in place and that kind of thing. When I have staff turnover now, it's a little bit easier, but there still are things I'm finding I didn't have visibility to. So the problem is not 100% fixed. I would say it's 40 to 60% fixed.
So let's go from that 0 to 40 to 60. What
Mhm.
did you put in place to make it better just in that initial phase? You mentioned project management software. You don't have to drop names if unless you want to of
Mhm.
any of the tools that
Yeah.
you use,
That
but
was it.
there's project management software. What else? What else did you do to actually bring that up to 40 to 60%?
So a little bit, so we use Asana a lot, which is good because it's a good communication tool between, if a staff member is writing content for a client, for
Mm-hmm.
example, right? I can see it, the client can see it, they can give approval. We can also make comments on it. I can go in and change things. We could see if something's completed, right? It's that kind of thing. So that kind of tool being in place helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we also shifted our social media model from being end to end, one person handles it, to a little bit more of a hybrid of Ariana and I see everything. And it's that, again, that's not 100% foolproof, and it's also not 100% of what happens all the time, because we are still growing and still doing trial and error on certain things, but it has helped in the process of, okay, we're dropping the ball less, right? We're having more visibility on things. We're seeing when things are going wrong. We're able to catch them most of the time before they make it to the client. So all of those things are happening, but again, it's not the 100%, right?
Okay. So if you had to pick one thing to really improve on now that you've put that stuff in place and things have
Mhm.
gotten better, but they're not where you want them to be yet, what's the one thing you're focused on next to say, we really need to improve on this stat or this metric or this thing?
I think for me, it has to be the mode of communication from the client to us, and vice versa, right? Because I still find that I'm finding things out a little bit too late, and while I try to stay in good contact with my clients and you know uh, be delivering early and all of that, I still can't be everywhere, right? So I think I'm most interested in finding a way to hear of issues, things needed, that sort of thing, because before they become an emergency, or before they become a, hey, you guys didn't deliver, or you didn't do this well, or whatever it is.
So I have some initial reactions based on what you were just saying,
Mhm.
but I want to ask one or two questions to really drill in
Yeah.
because when you're talking about not finding out about something, there's a question of structural visibility of are you
Hmm.
getting
Hmm.
are you is there a log jam? Is there something preventing you from getting information? Or is it a human aspect? Is it people are not willing to raise their hand if something is going wrong when the structure for communicating already exists? So there's two kind of forks to this topic. And it
Yeah.
sounds like structurally, you have some of this in place already. If you're using project management software, you're probably getting automatic notifications of things, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's structurally built. If anybody out there is not using automatic notifications in project management software of any kind, please start. It is so helpful. That said, if you have the structure built, but you're not finding out until something's an emergency, I would go out on a limb and say, how often are you setting up the relationship with your customers to
Hmm.
actually make them feel, I'm going to say, safe to
Yeah.
reach out to you?
Hmm. Hmm. And I mean, that's a great question, right? I have some of my clients are very communicative, right? We have a weekly check-in or a bi-weekly check-in or a monthly check-in or whatever makes the most sense, because some people are busy, right? And then there are some clients who you know, we have enough trouble getting things approved through the project management thing, and I might not hear from them for 3 months, right? Outside of just the here's the work, click click complete or whatever it is, right? Or sometimes we have to say, hey, good morning, is this approved, right? So I think it part of the challenge that I have is it really depends, right?
Okay.
It really depends on the relationship. It depends on, what the client has bandwidth for. And, so I think that's part of the thing that leads to some of these communication breakdowns.
Okay. And when you say what the client has bandwidth for, do you mean in terms of how regularly they respond or in what tone they respond?
Usually it's regularity,
Okay.
right? So I'm incredibly lucky and we work with good people. We like everybody kind of is on the same page and wants everybody to be successful, sort of thing. So I don't think it's an issue of tone or just I'm getting complaints because I'm getting complaints kind of thing. I think when I hear it's legitimate, 99% of the time there's something wrong,
But
right?
it's still only coming in when something's wrong, not before. Or,
Exactly.
okay. So then
Exactly.
it sounds like there could be room for not a check in, like, hey, how's everything looking on your end, and waiting for a response, but there could be here's a reevaluation of what our processes are right now. Is this still accurate?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps if you're sending that out, because if we don't know that they're going to respond, which we can never assume a client is actually going to respond at
Yeah.
any point, I'm in the same boat.
Yep.
I can't operate on the assumption that I'm going to get an answer. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of looking for an answer to an open ended question, if I'm going to give here's everything that we discussed last time, and this is what I'm working on, I just want to make sure. Has anything changed since then? Because I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing for you. I find I get far more responses. Yup, looks good. Thanks for checking. And
Mm-hmm.
occasionally I will get a wait, no, we do need to make a change. Thank you for bringing
Yeah.
this up. But it's always thank you, not we have a
Not
problem.
right. Right. Oh, that's really good. Okay.
Because you
Cool.
initiate that yourself rather than letting them initiate something. So that's where my wheels are spinning now, is it's in the way that we're communicating with our client rather than the need to get more answers and more responses to have visibility if there is a problem.
I
So
like that.
I'm going to put
Yeah.
that in your back pocket for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to all of the viewers watching this now, this is a difference between a structural, strategic, do we have the systems in place to deal with these things, and the how we physically construct an email, how we reach out to our customers, how we do what we do, making the
Mhm.
difference. So I like making that distinction because a lot of people look for a structural answer immediately, and 9 out of 10 times it helps, but
Mhm.
it doesn't solve people problems.
Yeah. And I like that because what I'm hearing in it is it's also a way to mitigate any scope creep, any misunderstanding, right? Any like, oh, but weren't you supposed to do this? And then we can
Yes.
always go back and say, well, here's what we have. That, this is why I was checking in, right? Like here are the things that I understood to be doing. What else do we need to discuss, kind of thing. And then it's less of a, hey, you didn't do this, and it's more of a, oh wait, I needed this too.
I'm actually going to use the example of you and I, because one of the things, full disclosure here, Marie Incontrera is hired by Liz Kislick Associates, our company. So that's
Mhm.
why I brought her on today, because she has such experience in all of this stuff. And one of the things that I interact with Marie on is our semi-monthly newsletter that
Yep.
goes out to all the subscribers to Liz Kislick's content. And one of the things that I do to prep that is to send Marie content blocks of different blog posts, of podcast interviews that Liz was on, of new information, all of that. And I learned how to do this from a third source. And then I talked with Marie about how she wanted it. And then I did that. And then after the first one, I sent another email saying, hey, let's talk about this process. Is there anything we can improve on? I know this is what you're used to, but are there ways of making it potentially better? And then we had
Yep.
a full conversation about ways of, and what did we come up with? I think there were some links and
Yep.
taglines.
Yeah, so the big thing for me was in the email you were giving me the title of the blog but not the link. And then there were like because we use a lead in on the MailChimp, so it'll have a line from the article, and then it'll say read more, right? So you sent a couple of suggestions for that, and I mean the link thing, it's something I'm so used to, right? I'm used to doing it. It probably, I think it saved me like 20 minutes of work last time. I was like, oh, this is why did this get easier? And it was literally because you put some links in an email. And I can't remember the last time I've had a conversation with a client saying, here's how can we make this better for each other. And if it saved 20 minutes of work with you, imagine what it's going to do for my 50 client relationships, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's just a real world example of how we were able to use that methodology. But the
Yeah.
the crux of it is communicate with your customer or your client or your partner or whoever it is about here's where we're at. Is this
Mhm.
where we want to be? And then
Yeah.
figure out how to get there. So if
Mhm.
you're having that conversation, you're going to create more opportunities for A, growth on a big scale, B, for fixing problems that might exist that you may not even know of, and C,
Yeah.
making that other person, whatever relationship they have to you, feel more included in the process, feel like you're on top of their stuff, that you're
Mhm.
attentive to their needs, all good things. So that's the takeaway from this Fix It 15 is communicate about where you are and are we where we need to be. So
Love
thank you for that. Thank you for going through that exercise with me,
it.
Marie. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you. This was really helpful. I feel like, one of the things that I like about this is that you're on the outside, and so sometimes we're in it. And so you looking at the problem and saying, oh, hey, here's a better way to communicate is going to be a game changer for us. So thank you for that.
Exactly. You're very welcome. Happy to do it. And I'll say with that, we'll start wrapping things up for this episode. But first of all, thank you so much for being here. So happy to have you. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about where they can find you, where they could find Incontrera Consulting, any links that you want, I will include in the video description as well. But just want to make sure people can reach out and find you if they need to.
Thank you. Yeah. You can find me on the Incontrera Consulting website. It's my last name, Incontrera.com. My family is very upset with me that I have taken that URL, but I thought Incontrera Consulting was too long. And I will give you my booking link. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, all the socials. You can find me by searching my name.
And we will include those links in the copy. Again, Marie, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
All right, take care. So what did you think? Did you get anything good out of it? Did you maybe learn something new or find a new perspective to something that might help you in your own business endeavors? I really have to thank Marie for coming out for this conversation, because not only is it our first episode, again, super excited, but it was such a good one, and the communication topic alone is worth the price of admission. Everybody knows communication is so important. And even though we were only talking about following up with your customers and clients, it's such a big topic. I could do a whole bunch of videos on just how to communicate, why it's important, different methods or strategies, who to recognize needs to be communicated in what way versus not. There's so much there. But it's something that never really gets discussed as training or as learning or as growing within business. It's just kind of expected at this point. So I'm glad we got to talk about that. Also really happy we were talking about managing creatives as that came up. We have to recognize that there are different people in our company. There are going to be different backgrounds and different beliefs. Could be culturally based, could be gender based, could be religious or socioeconomically based. There's so many backgrounds and factors to how people want to receive information and how they perceive information that we have to recognize the way we give it needs to be appropriate for that person or group. So great stuff in this episode. Again, there's so much to keep talking about, but please, I would love to hear from you what you got out of this, what made sense to you, what you thought needed to go deeper. Let me know, as I mentioned in the intro to this episode, what topics do you want to see us cover in future episodes? Because we want to make sure that this is a good experience and not educational in a sense, but it helps. It helps you grow. It helps your business grow. So let us know in the comments what you thought. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel so you get alerts about upcoming episodes, as we have a ton in production right now. So excited to bring you more from many other guests on many other subjects. But in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, that you got something out of this of value, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.